I'm probably going to say some things here that's going to make me unpopular to some people. And I'm okay with that because we need to have this conversation. So, if you want to see me make an ass of myself, stay tuned. It should be fun. What's happening, range-minded friends, families, and whatever else? Thanks for tuning in to the Range-Minded Podcast. I'm your host, Steve. You know, I try to make this show a place where you can go for news and entertainment and just some education when it comes to Second Amendment stuff, whether that be maybe some content on some gear or some target shooting or just the stuff that happens in Washington. I think all that stuff is important, and I think that all plays a role in our daily 2A lives. And maybe you can hear my dogs upstairs barking. I think she agrees as well. But we need to talk about something big. And I already know what you guys are. You already know what I'm going to talk about. There's no way to get around this. But I want to start with this first. I know you guys are familiar with Jocko Willink. At least you should be familiar with Jocko Willink. He has this saying, if you've listened to him or seen maybe some memes floating around, when something goes bad or doesn't go to plan, he says, good.
Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better.
Now, as I'm sure you know, that portion that made it into the bill was to reduce the NFA tax from $200 to $0. I know it sucks. I get it. It's not what we wanted in full. It is a portion of something that is better than nothing. But I, like many of you, am pissed about that. I mean, the Republicans had a chance to make a change to a bill, or to, not a bill, but I believe an unlawful registry that is 91 years old. We could have swept that thing away, got rid of it, said goodbye, and had a huge part of our rights restored that we haven't experienced in 91 years. Was that 3 generations, roughly? That's pretty substantial. I know it should have been better. But what can we learn from this? If you've been living under a rock, maybe this is the first episode of the Range Minded Podcast you've ever seen and you don't really know much about the NFA, let's just visit that really quick, because I don't want to spend all my time talking about something that's older than my grandpa. In 1934, there was a lot of gang violence, and I'm not talking Crips and Bloods, I'm talking gangsters and mobsters, right? So there was a lot of violence. Look up the Valentine's Day Massacre, and you'll see what we're talking about. To fight this violence with automatic weapons and that they're dealing with at the time, the government devised this plan, which would scoop up basically every firearm you can imagine other than maybe some revolvers. Luckily, some of those guns got taken out. Styles of weapons, like handguns, were actually included with the NFA in 1934. Luckily, some of that stuff changed. Now, the NFA restricts suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and something called any other weapon, AOWs. It also includes fully autos and some destructive devices and like grenade launchers, that kind of stuff too. Of course, the gangsters probably weren't using those things back then, but automatics and SBRs, that kind of stuff, yes, definitely they were using back then. Now, the NFA was designed as a tax to restrict availability of these weapons to people. Then they could get them on a tax evasion or other things, not just on some sort of a firearms charge. You might think that's great. We don't need suppressors. We don't need SBRs. We don't need short-barreled shotguns. But I disagree. And we've talked about that in other episodes. In fact, listen to the last episode. Now, that was 1934. Now, that tax that was put in place then was $200 per item. So every time you buy a suppressor or a short-barreled rifle or whatever, any one of those restricted items, it was a $200 tax on top of the cost of the item. Now, that being said, you could buy an automatic Thompson for like $50 or something like that, maybe even less. But the $200 tax on top of that, now you can see that that's quite a significant tax on that item. Now, if we were to adjust that tax to today's money, it would be close to $5,000. So if I'm buying a $800 suppressor, I would have to pay a $5,000 tax. That's very significant. That's a lot of money. Again, the NFA was designed to deter people, even law-abiding people, from exercising their rights. It's gross. It's a tax. And I believe, as many other 2A folks, that it is disgusting and illegal. Along with that tax, they designed a registration, which actually is illegal for the federal government to keep any kind of registry of what property you have, yet they did it with this NFA tax that was designed in 1934. So, big problem with the NFA. We don't like it. It's completely outdated. It is illegal and unlawful and completely repugnant to your Second Amendment rights. That's why you shouldn't like the NFA, by the way. And again, I don't want to hash this too much, but the big, beautiful bill, there was some legislation included within that bill that would have completely dismantled the NFA. Those items would have been removed, and we could have just purchased those items, specifically, not the machine guns and destructive devices, but SBRs, short-barrel shotguns, any other weapons, and suppressors by simply going through a standard background check. The left will tell you that there was no check system that was included, but that's a false, that's just a big lie, and they knew it because they needed to scare people away from it. There was still a background check system. You still had to fill out what we call a 4473, which is the federal form for a background check. It still had to take place just as if you were buying a regular firearm. But because we have, I believe, very, very weak representation for the most part. We had a few folks that were fighting for our rights very hard up until the bitter end. But the vast majority of them don't really care about our Second Amendment rights, regardless of what aisle that they stand on. So they failed to make the big portion of this, the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act, or what these two parts of that big, beautiful bill were called. They failed to include them in their fullest extent, which really did suck a lot. But I think as Second Amendment folks, Second Amendment advocates, the 2A family, we need to look at this through what I would consider Jocko Willink's good lens, right? We need to look at this, as sucky as it might be, as positive as possible. So I want to go through some pros and some cons, honestly, we'll go through both of them, about this big, beautiful bill and what was included with this zero NFA tax. So let's dive into those real quick. First, let's talk about some pros to what really took place. Now, I have to be honest and objective, and again, we need to look at this through a little bit more positive of a lens, even though I think it's dog shit as well. That's 3 if you're counting. So number 1 is it's going to make suppressor ownership more attainable to everyday people. Not that the cost of the suppressor is going to go down, but the restriction of the $200 tax is obviously down to 0. I know, again, this still sucks, but it's saving us a couple $100 that we would have to give to the government otherwise. I know that doesn't sound like a win, or at least a very good one, but I'll take a couple $100 extra in my wallet. The second thing we need to really look at, and this is kind of hard to perceive at this point, I have heard other people talk about this, is it kind of puts a chink in the armor. Can I say that? I'm going to say it anyways. It kind of puts a chink in the armor of the NFA itself. It puts a small crack in its foundation. And it might be just enough for us to wiggle our way into and open that even more and just destroy the foundation of it altogether. Now, that's a hope. I know that a lot, if you look at the American Suppressor Association and Palmetto State and some others, they jumped in immediately and filed a lawsuit immediately following the signing of this bill to work on the repeal of the NFA, which I am all for, by the way. It needs to be completely gutted. So, again, the second thing is it kind of opens up the avenues, even though ever so slightly, to really damage the NFA. I know it doesn't seem like much, and it's not a lot. It's not as much as we could have had, but at least it is something. The third thing. Now, I know this is kind of like rubbing salt into the wound, but the Hearing Protection Act was there for a reason, right? It was for the health and safety of firearms users. This does make it easier and more available to widespread, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It makes, again, suppressors more attainable, thus help accomplishing, if I can spit my words out, the purpose of the Hearing Protection Act. Not as what we wanted, but it is a little bit more attainable. So it's a small portion of the Hearing Protection Act. So the health and safety of firearms users is definitely a benefit. Guns are loud. We get that. And I guess the fourth thing that we could really consider is it's kind of saying F you to the ATF and the NFA altogether. It is a little bit of a middle finger. Because we're not giving the money to the government, that $200 tax, that we otherwise would be. I've heard numbers of about $200 billion that's going to be saved over the course of this bill, which they have no way to really calculate that. I think I expressed in my last episode the fear of, now that the Democrats see that, hey, this can be changed, the $200 tax wasn't cemented in place, that they could easily bump that up to some astronomical number. Maybe put the exchange rates and all that back together and figure out that it's like $5,000 nowadays. That would really suck. But we're not going to talk about those yet. Those are coming up. Again, this kind of kicks the ATF in the nuts just a little bit. They probably have their cup on, but it might just be a little bit. Now, it is definitely not all somewhat sunshine and lollipops, whatever that may be. There are definitely some cons to what took place. A lot of them. The illegal registration still exists. You still have to register those items with the ATF. That means you still have to fill out a Form 4. You still have to send your fingerprints and your photographs to the ATF to do the same frickin' background check that would have taken place at the point of sale if we would have just got rid of everything. Though we might not be spending the $200, we're still dealing with the paperwork. And this will affect wait times. I've heard people say, well, it may or may not affect. No, it will affect wait times. Because there's going to be a flood of suppressor purchases taking place once this bill, even though Trump signed it, it's not in effect yet. But once it does take effect, and we'll talk about that in a minute, it's going to drastically increase wait times. Right now, if you buy a suppressor right now and pay the $200 fee, you're going to see wait times as short as a couple of days. I have heard of people having a call back the same day before. It's going to go from a few days to maybe a month to several months. In fact, we might see the wait times that we were seeing a couple years ago where it's 13, 16, 18 months to get our stamp back, just for them to say, yes, you may have an item. That's gross, that's disgusting, and it's unacceptable, but it's going to be the reality. Yet the infringements still go on from here. Machine guns and some destructive devices, they're still in the NFA. You still have to pay the $200 fee, even after this bill takes effect. It's not going to matter. Those items are still controlled. They're still going to be hard to get. They're still amazingly expensive. I'd be curious to see what happens if machine guns ever come off the list. What's going to happen to prices? Because machine guns are stupidly expensive. And when we talk about destructive devices, that can add up very quickly, especially when you have to register and pay a tax on every grenade or explosive device that you're doing. That's a lot of dough. And none of that stuff has been wiped out. So, yeah, that's a con. So, screw you guys. Not you guys. The hypothetical government that didn't do their job and make the Hearing Protection Act and Short Act part of the big, beautiful bill. I mean, I really do love you guys. Like, I would never insult your intelligence. I mean, I question your intelligence because you're watching me, but I would never insult your intelligence. Let's just keep going. And on top of those things, the parliamentarian never got fired. She is still there. She still can counsel. We can see how well that went. Still counsel the Senate to take these things out if they try and reintroduce them. Now, side note, I was going to save this for later, and we will talk about this a little bit more in depth, but I'll share it now too. But we'll dig into it a little bit. Rumor has it that there are going to be some more reconciliation bills before the midterms, so maybe, fingers crossed, pressure on, by the way, pressure on to your representation, that if they do, I gotta be careful, that was close. If they still do another reconciliation package coming up in a few months, maybe they'll include the HPA and the Short Act in full in those next bills. We can only hope. We don't know what happens in the minds of the buffoons in Washington. Plus, her little antics, the parliamentarians' antics, about saying this didn't get covered or is kicked out because of the bird rule. I can't remember which way it works, but because of the bird rule, we couldn't include them because it's not a tax. Even though in 1937, the Supreme Court ruled the NFA as a tax, apparently Republicans can't look at history. I mean, they got a Googleizer on their phone. They could seriously look and see in about 45 seconds that it was a tax, but whatever, that's fine. I guess it's not really fine, but that still exists. So even with a potential future budget bill, the parliamentarian is still going to put her stupid little 2 cents into it. And I don't know. She needs to be fired. Why are we keeping her, by the way? We didn't vote her in, you or me. She does not work for us, obviously. Why are we keeping her again? Like, she's been there since Obama. Like, why? Why, Republicans? Because you're spineless is why. That's why you let her kick you around. Another big negative. Again, the Democrats just saw how, easy it might be to move the NFA stuff into different places and cause bigger problems. And anti-gun groups see this too, and they are pushing extremely hard on their politicians to make these changes much more difficult for us in the future. So you got Brady and Moms Demand Action and these others that are definitely pushing extremely hard to make it difficult for us. Get your mind out of the gutter. So we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay active. Apathy is the opposite. I guess is the villain too, is the enemy of. That's my quote. Apathy is the enemy of liberty. So we cannot be apathetic anymore. I know that during this whole HPA inclusion thing a few months ago, that our representation in DC were flooded with communications from pro-2A crowd. Flooded. Whether they were pro-gun or not, their constituents made their voices heard. And I think that struck fear in these people because they realized, again, the pro-gun side and the anti-gun side both saw the amount of people that want their 2A rights back. That should have probably gone into the plus section, but that wasn't really included in the negative section either. But we will talk about that more in here in a few minutes, because that is a very important thing. So big picture, great big picture, right? Though it sucks because it wasn't in full, what just happened did strike a blow on the legal side of the NFA. Because if it's not a tax, then it's an illegal registry. And it violates the Bruin decision. That's where I was saying earlier that groups like Gun Owners of America, Palmetto State, in fact, I think every major gun rights group filed a giant lawsuit. They came together to fight against the NFA in full because, again, if it's not a tax, like the parliamentary said, it's not a tax, then why are we doing it? That means it's an illegal registry and it's a restriction against the gun owner's rights. Maybe they didn't quite think this one through all the way. I didn't realize this until we started doing some research on it, because it makes sense now. That's a big deal. So even though it wasn't exactly what we wanted, it did put that little tiny crack in that foundation to force the Bruin decision in there and explode it. That's the hope. That's the goal of what's taking place with these new lawsuits that just were filed immediately after Trump signed it. So we need to just wait and see what's going on. But we don't need to be apathetic. Like I just said a few seconds ago, apathy is the enemy of liberty. We have to keep our representatives, they have to have their feet to the fire on this. We cannot take our foot off the gas pedal on this one. We have to be enraged and infuriated and make your voice heard. That's the only way this will take place. All right, let's move to a little bit different part of this subject. You like my hands? Is that fun? When does this take place? So I've heard people already saying, can I just go do this now? President signed it into passing. Like, let's just make this happen. In fact, some of the anti-gun groups are already saying, you can do this now. Look what just took place. Go do it. To try and drag people up in a net, right? Of illegalities. Well, that's a tough word to say when you're half asleep. It doesn't take effect yet. Just because Trump signed it doesn't mean it's law and ratified and happening. This zero tax does not take effect until January 1 of 2026. Yeah, that's stupid. I agree. Let's just make it happen now. But I guess it gives you time to pick out some cans and put them on layaway. So don't get too excited thinking that you don't have to pay a tax yet. It doesn't take effect. Again, we still have to take photos and fingerprints and fill out the Form 4 and bend over and take it without any lube until the NFA is completely destroyed. But at least it's a little easier. I think you've seen my meme. Maybe if you follow me on X, at Range Minded, by the way, on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I keep posting this meme about P. Diddy, which is relevant to the NFA. You'll just have to look at it. Look at my profile. It's always being posted. You'll see it. I'm sure some of you are upset that machine guns didn't make the cut into this whole zero tax thing. And I get it. It sucks. It's stupid. And I don't know why. I can only assume that it has something to do with the political view of what a machine gun is and a destructive device. Because you know how the anti-gunners, they make everything into this giant boogeyman. So if it just swept in everything into zero tax, then they'll say, oh, machine guns are going to be used in crime. Just like the left was saying, oh, suppressors are the tool of assassins, and the Republicans just want these silent killers all over the place because they're crazy, right? They'd love to use hyperbole and ridiculous arguments to make everything more scarier than it already is. So maybe they didn't have the machine guns in there because of the political implications that it might have. Honestly, I think the Republicans are already in trouble for not including or like destroying the NFA altogether. But we'll see. We'll see. So for those of you guys that are wanting a machine gun, you're still going to have to pay, first of all, the ridiculous amount of what a machine gun costs, plus the $200, plus the form. Everything is all the same. Nothing changed on machine guns or grenades or landmines or whatever cool things that we can't have. Some other folks are like thinking, hey, will this make suppressors cheaper because more people are buying them? No, that's not how economy works, or economics, excuse me. If there's more of a demand, prices are going to go up. So chances are this may negatively impact the cost of suppressors. They're probably going to bump up just for sheer demand, right? But this may open the door for new fire or suppressor manufacturers, which then increases the amount available in the market, which could level out costs. I don't know. This is literally anybody's guess. My hunch says suppressors are going to become more expensive. And that is just the way that it is. If there's something that you want, if there's a can out there that you're really looking at, it might not hurt to think about putting one on layaway. Unless you want to just buy it and pay the extra $200, whatever, that's cool if you want to. It's not gonna have a positive impact on prices of suppressors. I think cans are gonna go up. That's just the nature of the beast. I don't know. I don't have a magic 8-ball anymore because it was telling me to do dangerous things and I had to throw it in the trash. We'll see. We'll see what happens to the cost of suppressors. Again, my guess is they are going to go up. That's just the way it is. By the way, on that note, if you, my listeners out there, have a question that you want me to answer on air, I'm totally cool with doing that. There's a couple of ways that you could submit those questions to me. One is probably the easiest way, honestly, is just to follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, @RangeMinded. And you can just message me there. If you want to email me, that's cool too. Just email it to the Gmail account, rangeminded@gmail.com. That's the easiest way. Or I could give you the official steve@rangemindedpodcast.com. But honestly, the Gmail account is way faster and easy for me to access. So that would be probably the easiest way to get that message to me. So if you have a question, throw it that way. That's cool. Now let's just take a second. Okay, not really a second. I'm long-winded. It's going to be a few seconds. Let's talk about how we in the 2A community can capitalize on the worst of this situation, or at least make the best of the situation that we have now. There are ways that we can at least utilize this to our benefit. And the number one thing we can do is budget. Again, this zero tax thing doesn't take effect until January 1 of 2026. Now is a great time. Again, we got to make the most out of this situation while it's there. It's a good time to maybe do some dream shopping. Jump onto Silencer Co. or Silencer Shop actually is another good option. Silencer Co. does have some cool cans. Q makes some amazing stuff. I mean, there's tons of suppressor manufacturers out there. Honestly, Capital Armory through Palmetto State has a lot of cool stuff out there too. Maybe it's time to do some shopping, plan ahead, and save. We got a few months to save now. 5 months we can save up for our future can purchase. It's not a bad idea. Also, maybe you're thinking of turning that pistol into an SBR, or you want to build a dedicated SBR for a future can. With this $200 tax gone, that gives you a little bit extra money and time to plan on doing the paperwork and all that stuff, getting everything ready for when this takes place. Again, the ATF, the background check system, the FBI, I guess, is going to get flooded with applications. So just plan ahead a little bit for that. Speaking of the process, maybe it's a good time if you haven't done the route of the NFA paperwork. Maybe it's a good time to really study up on it, learn how it works, maybe stockpile on some fingerprints and photographs, and just get ready for the whole process. Learn how it works. If you plan on buying a lot of items, maybe it's time to do some research on a trust, NFA trust. There's a few avenues to make that happen. Silencer Shop has some generic NFA trusts available. I'm sure the NRA would love that too. Or maybe you could talk to a good, reputable 2A leaning attorney. Every state has one. I know we have a few in my state here in Idaho. Just do your research. It might be worth doing the trust, which will save you a little bit of time. It streamlines some of the process. Maybe not streamline, might not be the right word, but it makes some stuff easier than doing it as an individual. Plus, if you want more people to enjoy those suppressors, a trust probably is a better option, but talk to an attorney. Don't listen to me. I know nothing about attorney stuff. That's not my gig. Another way we can capitalize on this, I guess, somehow, is I have shot a lot, especially in my younger days, without hearing protection on because I was a teenage moron. We think we're invisible. Oh my gosh, no. We think we're invincible and invisible to the laws. It's not good, right? Shooting without suppressors, or at least with hearing protection not being on, that sucks a lot. So maybe it's a good time to think about, if you're getting older, that protect what hearing you have left, or if you have littles in the house that you'd like to take shooting, it's like an investment on their hearing for the future. So that's another way to look at this. Big tip. Watch these lawsuits that are taking place, that are just being filed, like through the GOA and FRAC and NRA, like where all these big two-way groups are coming together. Watch the lawsuits. Pay attention to the lawsuits. Don't worry if you don't have time. I'll help you stay abreast of these situations. This is a big deal because these will make a difference in the future. We have to understand what's going on. Plus, it helps us see what the other side is trying to do as well, as far as fighting to keep our white rights away from us. Does that make sense? Screw the bad guys. We want our rights back. And one of the way that takes place is through these lawsuits. So we need to know what's going on, as far as that is concerned as well. If that made any sense, whatever, I'm not going to re-edit that. And I mentioned this a few minutes ago, and I'm still going to mention this over and over again. The fight is not over. In fact, I think it's just really begun. You know, some of those boxing movies like Rocky, right, when he's fighting and he happens to land a really good punch, he's getting his butt kicked, and all of a sudden, boom, he strikes the bad guy, the Russian dude, right, and his confidence builds up. This is kind of the same thing. We've been getting our ass kicked for a long time, and this was a good punch. As much as we don't think it is, this was a good punch against the government and the anti-gun crowd. But this should only be a confidence builder for us, because we have a lot of fight left in us. Whether we want to or not, we have to fight to regain a lot of ground that has been taken from us, especially over the last 91 years. So, that being said, you have to get involved. There is no other way to say it. Again, apathy is the enemy to liberty. We can no longer sit down and wait for somebody else to do it. We can't just suppose that the NRA or the GOA or any of these other groups are going to fight for us. We have to be involved. And that includes, and I say this all the time because it's the real deal, because it's truth, it starts locally. And then we branch out from there. We can no longer stand and wait for other people to fight for us. Those days are gone. We are in the spot we are in now because our grandparents didn't do anything because they expected these organizations to do it for them. That can't happen anymore. The anti-gun crowd is very vocal and very active, and they are always making their voices heard at every level of government, from state to federal, in some cases from city or municipality to the federal level. They are actively there making their voices heard. If that's the only voice that the representation hears, they're just going to assume that's what the people want. We can no longer be that way. Again, I really, truly, honestly believe that over the past few months leading up to the big, beautiful bill, Washington, the scum in Washington, heard a great deal about the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. We were very, very active. We made phone calls, hopefully you did, phone calls, emails, and we blasted them on their socials. They got lambasted, especially after the parliamentarian bullshit. That's at 5, I think I'm at now, 5 swear words if you're counting. Yeah, it's we cannot be idle anymore. I don't know how to light a fire under you any more than I have tried. You have to get off the couch. You have to get off the toilet if you're watching this on the can and do something, anything. You can no longer be, you can't stand on the fence anymore. You have to be on one side or the other. That's just the way it is. Bottom line is, and I know this is not real popular, it is a win for the 2A. Not a great win, not an amazing win, but it is a little bit of a win. It's just the battle of a big war that we won. That's it. It's not what we wanted. I get that. I get that 100%. But hopefully this went from a kick in the nuts to becoming a wake-up call saying, hey, I really did make a little bit of a difference in my action, letting my voice be heard. It's time to get loud. Again, back to that whole Rocky analogy, right? We've been pummeled left and right, but we just landed a pretty solid hit. Not a knockout hit, but a pretty solid hit. And now it's time to be energized and extremely active and loud and maybe even a touch obnoxious at times. Now is the most important time than ever to be a vocal gun owner. Quit being pushed down and made fun of. No, you're done with that. Stop being that guy or gal. We are Americans, damn it. That's six swear words if you're counting. We are Americans and we are not meant to be passive. The Constitution was not designed for a lazy people. We are meant to be very active. It's we the people that are the government, at least in charge of the government. The Constitution was written as a restriction to government, not a declaration of liberties to the people. Well, other than the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. But the Constitution was written as a restriction to government. You need to understand that, and you need to get that through your head that that's how it is written and why it was written. And that the Second Amendment guarantees your right. Well, actually, God guaranteed your right. The Second Amendment just put it into words. That you have a right to defend yourself from anything, any kind of enemy. Okay? That's the purpose. Woo! Again, I know that's probably not the most popular thing I could have said, but I said it, and I mean it. I think that even though this isn't what I wanted and what you wanted, I hope it's a wake-up call. I hope it's an eye-opener for saying, hey, I can't stand idly by anymore. My voice does make a difference, and it's time for me to act. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's going to be coming up. I think life is going to get extremely nuts. And I think some of that is by design to keep us from being involved. Don't let that distract you. You do have to protect your family. You have to make sure that your family's needs are met, but you still have time to make a post. You still have time to make a comment, short video, something, a phone call, an email. You still have time. Don't expect somebody else to do it for you. You have to do it. We all have to do it. That's just the way it works. All right, let's wrap this thing up. A couple more things and I'll let you go. Starting January 1, we know that the tax is going to go from $200 to $0. I know that's not the win that we wanted, but at least it was something. It still is kind of a middle finger to the federal government and the ATF. All right, that's okay. I know it sucks, but at least it's something. But here's what I want you to do. Okay, there's a couple steps I want you to do starting tonight or tomorrow, as I'm recording this at 10 o'clock at night. On the 7th, by the way, just so you know. Number one, I want you to make some plans. Figure out what you want to do. If you're planning on buying some sort of an NFA item that the taxes will be to $0, yeah, I know machine guns are still there. We'll get there, I hope. But anyway, plan ahead. Figure out what you want. Find some cans, or maybe you want to build an SBR. Save up. Make those plans ahead of time so you're ready for January 1. I know that the wait times aren't going to get any better. The registration still exists. That super blows. I get it. Okay? But let's still do it. The second thing I want you to do is you need to join some sort of gun rights group. If you have one at the state level, which you do, join that group. that is going to have major impacts on you directly because it's within your state. But if you can afford it, maybe join GOA or the NRA or some of these other ones that are out there. FPC, there's a ton. There's a ton at the national level. They do need money because they are filing these lawsuits. They are fighting for you in the trenches. So that's where your membership dues go, is to help make these lawsuits something. And don't be scared to just donate. It's okay. Again, this stuff costs a butt ton of money, and they could use your help. 3, get involved. Get vocal, get loud. Make your voice heard, whether it be on social media or anything, whatever it is. At the office, make your voice heard. It's okay to own a gun in the United States. In fact, the majority of people do own firearms in the United States. It's okay. We need to normalize safe firearms ownership and use. Again, like it used to be years ago. It's okay. But again, be vocal on X. Make your voice heard on Instagram, on Facebook, if you still use Facebook. Whatever it is. Be there. Be present. Message your legislators. Put them on check on their social media because everybody sees how you feel. And I guarantee you're not the only one that feels that way. There are millions of other Americans that feel the same way that you do. And many of us messaged and communicated with those people in Washington. It's okay. In fact, I encourage it. I want you to be almost obnoxious when you're communicating with them directly, but just be the squeaky wheel over and over again. We need to make our voices heard. We need to normalize firearms use and ownership in America again. It's important. And again, if we see any more bills taking place, again, I've heard rumors that there are going to be other reconciliation bills. We need to hear when those are coming. And if I hear about them, I will definitely bring them to light for you guys to see and hear about. But do your due diligence. Be active that way too. Know what's going on. So when these come to light, we can pressure our representation to put the HPA and the Short Act back in these bills and have them passed. We want this. This is freedom being returned the way it should be, and no longer this ridiculous, draconian, illegal registration and tax that should have never taken place. It was underhanded and dirty in the beginning, and the feds knew it, and they did it anyways. This needs to be repealed, and we want our freedoms back. All right, that's it. That's the show. I'm going to let you guys go. But I do want to say this. I know I said that last time. Just remember, I do this because I am passionate about freedom. I'm passionate about the Second Amendment, and I hope you feel that passion. If you liked this show, boy, that sounded really dirty. If you liked this show, whether you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, please share, like, and do whatever you need to do on those video platforms. If you're listening to it in the podcast form, leave me a good review and share it. I want our voice to be heard. Again, the Second Amendment is something I am extremely passionate about, and it's something I want to carry on for generations. I want our grandkids to tell us, thank you for fighting and keeping our rights intact. That is like my ultimate goal. Another thing, please don't neglect your training. I honestly don't feel like I talk about this portion of firearms ownership enough. Training is more important than a cool gun. Find good first aid training, find good tactics, and good philosophy when it comes to firearms ownership. That is so important. You can't get water out of an empty well. And if you want to share your passion and your love for the Second Amendment, you need to fill your well. So get that training. It's so imperative. Also, this is not hyperbole. Please take somebody shooting. We want our 2A family to grow. And the only way to make that happen is if we invite people to go shooting with us. In fact, I'm taking somebody shooting tomorrow night. So I burped and I had to pause that and cut that out. So you don't even know what happened, and I didn't have to tell you that I burped, but I did because I love you. I don't know why I included that, but I did. Anyways, I love you guys. Stay safe. Stay range-minded. Take somebody shooting. Love you guys.
Get up, dust off, reload, recalibrate, re-engage, and go out on the attack.